like a 1,000-pound steer, you're going to get about 400 pounds of beef. It's about $15 to $18 for a 100-pound bale. 35 calves born, probably 2,000 pounds, 2,500. I'm Jason Chamberlain with Blue Pine Ranch.
I'm Marcus Romero, Romero's ranch hand. I work for Blue Pine Ranch.
It kind of got started more as a hobby that kind of grew into more than a hobby. It became an expensive hobby. So then I decided, you know what, I should go a little bit bigger and try to make it so it at least pays for itself. We started by, I grew up on kind of a homestead, had a few cows and chickens and things. And so I just kind of had a love for animals and love for cows. And so finally when we were able to buy kind of a place like this with a little bit of land, I got a couple cows. And that's where the hobby part came in. And then within a few years, it became apparent that it wasn't going to pay for itself, but maybe if I turned into a business and grew a little bit. So we kind of started doing that and then we switched to the Wagu cows instead of the Angus cows and started to just try to make ends meet and make a profit with it. So
when did you start with your first cows, and then when did you switch to the Wagu?
We started with our first cows in 2017, had some Angus cows and out here. And it was about 2020 when I started to just kind of, so just a couple of years, thought, it costs more to feed these cows than I'll ever get by selling their calves or anything else. It's just kind of losing battle for me when you're that small. And so that's when I thought if I switch to Wagyu, then hopefully the cost of feed is the same and then we can sell them for more. So I started thinking about it in about 2020, and about 2021 is when I kind of jumped in with both feet and invested some money in buying some expensive cows and brought them over.
Walk me through what a typical day-ish would be for you guys here at the ranch.
That's the fun part, is there's almost never the same thing. You're up early and you feed all the animals, feed the animals, make sure they got water, make sure they're safe. And then you're always checking fences to make sure nothing's breaking or everything's secure. And then the typical throughout the day, there's almost always something to repair, or there's always something to do,
Checking hoses, make sure nothing's leaking.
Yeah, because we'll have a water leak more often than you would expect. And so checking hoses.
No animals get out. And then on the business side, we do inventory, make sure, see what cuts we have, what cuts we need, see how many cows we have that are going to process, get the time frame for it. And then do the marketing, the posting, and the getting things ready for the market as well.
What do you guys do for advertising? Do you spend money on marketing? How do you guys get your name out there?
A lot of it's word of mouth, the farmers markets, passing out cards, social media. We do Instagram and Facebook mostly. We just became members of the Chamber of Commerce in Queen Creek. Just kind of networking locally in our community and at church, right? Church friends and
church friends and neighbors. So a lot of word of mouth, not a whole lot of money in official marketing. Or
how did you guys get your name and your logo?
Man, that's a good question. I don't know. I like so our properties up north are in kind of the high desert country, so there's a lot of pine trees. And so I liked the idea of pine trees, being there. And then Blue Pine was a name I liked. I don't know where it came from. I might have heard it one time. I don't know. But Blue Pine, because you have blue spruce, you have, so there's ponderosa pines a lot. And so this Blue Pine Ranch is kind of how we came up with it. Thought it's fitting since we're kind of in desert-ish, dry climates with a lot of pine trees.
So talk about your other properties, and then how much time do you spend at each one? And do you have employees there managing it for you, or is it just you going out and doing it every week? How do you work with having so many properties in different locations?
We have a full-time employee at each one. Okay. So a brother of mine lives up on the ranch in Utah, and he takes care of the animals there. And we have a couple of vacation rental houses that we also rent out to kind of help supplement things in that area. And then in Snowflake, the one in Arizona, I have a cousin who does that. So he works for me full-time. And same thing, he manages the herd and fixes fences and checks on them and feeds them. And then if we ever have any free time, sometimes we do handyman work around the area, maintenance or construction with other people that need help to bring in a little bit of extra revenue when we when we're not tied to the animals.
How often are you personally going to those properties? Not as much? Are you kind of just solely based here then?
Yeah, I'm not as much. I wish I was. The goal is to be up there much more often, but I don't get up as much, partly because the other guys run it so well. Yeah. We'll go up when we need to. If there's something we need to do with the cattle that I guess I know how to do, so we'll go up there to show them or do it, or when we're shipping cows back and forth. That's mostly it, just kind of when I'm required, I guess. That's what tends to bring me up. I mean, I'd love to spend all my time up there, especially in the summer months. It gets a lot cooler.
How many employees do you have?
4. So we have Marcus, then my cousin, my brother, and then one other part-time helper who helps here in the afternoons.
And then what are some of your biggest expenses that you're finding in this business?
The biggest, most consistent expense is feed. It seems like every time we sell a cow or we make some money, we got to buy more hay, you know, so hay is very expensive. We haven't had the room or the equipment to grow it ourselves, and so we have to buy it from hay growers. After that, then it's the processing of the cattle once we have one ready to process. So either starting with the feed or the end with the butcher, those are the two costly parts that really take a lot of money.
And about how much does hay cost here?
It's about $15 to $18 for a 100-pound bale. That's what we buy. Like we buy it with our haystacks. Each bale is 100 pounds, and it's about $15 to $18.
How much does that feed?
That'll feed usually one cow for about a week. So we're going through a lot. You know, we go through probably 4 bales of hay a day just feeding the animals local here.
And then how much does it cost-ish to process a cow? I'm sure it depends on the size.
Yeah, they're usually roughly about $1 a pound live weight is what I budget and plan on. So 1,000-pound steer, which is your average steer, is going to cost about $1,000 to budget or to process. And it might be more like 700, but then if we do bacon, or we'll do some unique cuts, and then they charge more than that. So we usually just know we're safe budgeting about $1 a pound live weight.
And how often are you guys processing? Is it like a monthly thing? Is it a yearly thing? How often are you processing cows?
It averages about once a month. We did about 12 cows last year, but sometimes we'll do 4 at a time, and then when they're at the right age, then we'll process them and then store them in the freezer until we can get them sold. But we did about 12. We hope to do about 25 this year. So we're hoping to kind of step on the gas and go a little faster.
Are you guys looking to expand? How are you hoping to expand in the future? What are some of your goals you have for your business growth?
Yeah, right now my goal longer term is we want to get to 1,000 head of cows and have most of them up north, because that's where we have the space and the room. We're going to get there with a mixture of buying live animals as well as, you know, breeding our own herd. But the goal is to be at 1,000 cows, because that seems to be the point where we can really get a lot more advertising, a lot more business, and the drop shipping and getting
into restaurants.
Yeah, getting into restaurants and the different shops. So we freeze brand the cattle because I'm too soft-hearted to do a hot brand. So we do a freeze brand where it turns their hair white instead of burning them, you know.
Yeah.
So they do that a lot with horses, and I just been doing that with the cows, because that's always the hard part is you know, which ones are we going to keep and which ones are we going to beat. But at least these guys got a good life, and until they're old enough to be processed, which is usually about 2 to 2.5 years old. And then we keep all the females right now and breed them, because since we do Wagu beef,
Okay.
and so it's a smaller brand or smaller breed, and so we're kind of having to breed them ourselves. So I've got 3 bulls, so we keep as many cows as we can, because we're just trying to grow the herd. It's hard to buy more Wagu to grow the herd that way. We can, but they're expensive. There's 2 main breeds in the U.S. There's they call it black Wagu, and I would butcher it if I said it the Japanese name, but it's something like Koroge, I think.
Okay.
That's black Wagyu. Then there's red Wagyu, which is Akaushi, and that's what we have. Most of what we have. We have some black too. Yeah, somehow they were kind of the emperor's breed, and the U.S. didn't allow many imports until kind of recently. I think the mid-90s or 2000s.
Are you doing that because it's like a better profit margin, or is it like more like sought after, like a higher value, or what was the thought process on going in that direction?
Yeah, both of those, and it's healthier too. The fat in there has more oleic acid and omega-3s, and so it's a healthier beef. But I honestly just switched. I was doing Angus, and they don't even pay for themselves. The cost of feed was so high that it costs more to feed a cow than you get in a year. And so we switched to the Wagyu, and I invested some money in some bulls and some cows to start the herd, because they eat the same. So then our cost of feed we're able to sell more. There's a demand for it. We have to find the right markets because it's more expensive.
How long does it take to build a herd then?
Well, the cows, their gestation's 9 months, and so once a cow gets pregnant, 9 months later they're going to have a calf. That calf can usually, if it's a heifer or that's a female cow that hasn't had a calf yet, they can usually have a calf about 2 years old. So it takes, by the time one cow has had a calf, it's about a year, but that calf 2 more years before she can have a calf. So it kind of starts to multiply as we get more and more of these younger calves. For example, this little girl right here on the ground was born on Saturday, so she's just under a week old, and that one was born yesterday, kind of the dark. The dark lump over there, yeah, she's just napping. They're like babies. They nap more than they're awake for the first couple of weeks. So that's kind of fun because this one with the horns, this is her mom, this kind of black and brown one. And so we have a few generations.
So when did you start doing just the Wagyu then?
I started about 2021. So it's been about, it might have been mid 2020 actually. So it's been about 3.5 years, almost 4 years.
And then you only process males, is that right?
So far, that's all we've done, just because the goal is to grow the herd. We might process females once we get enough. When the mama cows are really super old and they're kind of ready to, you know, we processed one cow. She was 15, it was kind of heartbreaking, but we ended up, she became ground beef, and so we were able to at least kind of, I felt, use her body to process the, you know, the ground beef. And but she was a good old cow and just got to the age where she wasn't happy, arthritis and everything else. And so we're like, okay, let's take care of her.
Where are your bulls?
So this bull here, we have one bull for every herd, because you get more than one, they end up fighting and causing a problem.
Right.
So he's a young boy. He's just about 3 years old. But about the time he's 5, he'll be full grown, and by then his head will look small compared to his body. They just continue to fill out and they get quite muscular. But he's young. We have a couple more mature bulls in our pastures up north.
Okay.
And we just have one bull for every herd, and they kind of.
And you just leave them in there?
Yeah.
For natural, yeah.
Yeah, we just leave them. A lot of ranchers, it's smarter to separate the bull and then put them in at one time so that everybody gets pregnant at once and everybody calves at once. We don't do that. We probably will when we get bigger and need to be more organized, but for now we just leave the bull in, and he's a good boy. He does sometimes. Sometimes he likes to display his dominance, but we have a healthy respect for each other.
So how much will he weigh when he's fully grown?
Probably 2,000 pounds, 2,500 to be really big. He's probably close to 2,000 right now. He might, 1,800 to 2,000 pounds is what he is now. And he'll probably gain another 600 or 700 pounds on him.
Is that one pregnant, the black one in the back?
Yeah, very pregnant.
She looks pretty big.
So the very far back one back there.
She looks big too.
Yeah, her name's Cookie. She's ready to calve. So they just kind of, they're very mature. They're both about 10 years old and just good mamas and just great cows.
And so do they typically calve at the same time-ish, or is it kind of just random?
Kind of ish, like we have right now. We had these 2 calve within the last week, and there's 3 more that are due. Sometimes they're early, sometimes late, but within about a month, we'll probably have 5 calves here.
Okay. And
they all kind of tend to go in groups because they'll all calve, and then they'll all probably get pregnant about the same time and do it all over again in about 10 months. It usually takes about a month afterwards if the bull's with them to get pregnant. So
the ones you're taking to auction, how old are they?
Those were between 7 and 10 months old.
And you're selling them to like other farms?
Just anybody, yeah, to other farms, yep.
Because they won't get processed until they're older, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And a couple of those were heifers. They'll probably be used for breeding.
Okay.
We tell them that those are Wagyu cross, or Wagyu Angus cross.
Okay.
And so that's why we sell them to whoever wants them. Most people buy. At the auction, they don't really sell for much more money, but it's a quick way to kind of cull the herd and send some out. And it gives us a little bit of cash flow now rather than wait for another 2 years before we can process any of the steers that we sent. They'd be about 18 more months, another 1.5 years before they get processed.
So how do you keep like gene pools separate? Do you start moving them to different farms and stuff? Yeah,
we'll rotate the bulls. So any of the red ones, they're all registered. So we register them with the American Wagyu Association so that we have the papers on them. And once we get too many genes, we'll move to a different bull. Once in a while, some people will do just buy semen and AI some cows to kind of introduce new genetics. We might do that once we get a little bit bigger, but right now we're just doing it with the bull, and usually about 20 cows is what they have. We don't quite have that many here, but close. So then we got the other herds are about 25 and 22 up north. I bought this little girl she's half Holstein, which is the milk cow, the dairy cows, half Holstein, half Wagyu, and I bought her from a dairy. Our hope is that once she calves, she'll be our milk cow, but we don't know. We'll see if she ever calves. She's pregnant. She's due in about 3 months. But yeah, we don't. Most of the horns have all been raised on our place because I just haven't done a lot of dehorning. I mean, I could, and we have in the past.
What's the benefit of that?
The benefit of dehorning?
Yeah.
Well, it keeps, they're not a danger to you as much. Okay. And you can put them in, there's a machine over there called a squeeze chute where we have to, if they're bigger and we need to give them shots or doctor them up at all, we put them in a squeeze chute so that we can kind of lock them in. And the horns can get in the way of that. They can really have a problem trying to get their head in. So yeah, so it's handy to not have horns. These ones don't get very big, the Wagyu, compared to some breeds that have really big horns.
Yeah.
And we just haven't, it hasn't become a problem, and so we haven't really been that aggressive in dehorning when they're young.
And what's the benefit, or like why do you register them?
Well, for breeding, so you can't register a cow unless their parents are already registered. So if you want to keep that line, you've got to do it. And for us, we do it for both, for if we're going to start selling for the breed, so selling live purebred animals, you got to have the papers. And also, if anybody ever needed proof that we actually have Wagyu, like if we were to market or we're selling to a restaurant, sometimes they'll want to see the paperwork that it's actually registered Wagyu and we're not making it up.
So is that like kind of what you're trying to look to do, is like be a supplier for like a restaurant or something, or is that what you're doing now?
Yeah, we're kind of doing it now. We have one small restaurant that buys ground beef from us, which is really nice because ground beef is one of the harder to sell. And then we just sell at markets and then sell to the public. We want to get into restaurants because that's more of a demand, but we got to make sure we have enough cattle to supply what they need.
Okay.
And right now we're kind of up and down. You know, we'll have 4 or 5 steers ready all at once because they get born all at the same time, and then we'll butcher them, and then we have to wait for a few more months before we have some more. So it's a little less even flow right now, but we're getting there.
What do you feed them? Like, so they're not just eating grass?
No, we feed them hay, so that's a hay stack. It's alfalfa and grass hay, so they're raised on hay. And then when we finish them for the steers, we have a choice. We can either finish them off with grass if people want grass fed, or a lot of them just want the good marbling, so we'll finish them with some finisher grain, which has minerals and corn, oats, and barley kind of mix to kind of get a lot more marbling. So if we have, like we have one butcher who likes just grass fed, and they'll sell it at their counter, but it has to be grass fed Wagyu, so that cow we'll bring in and only finish with grass.
And that's all, you're selling to all like local people like in the Phoenix area?
Yeah, ish. I mean, we have a website, and for a while we had people ordering from out of state and we would ship to them.
Okay.
That hasn't been that big lately, and I kind of don't mind it. It's kind of a pain to ship.
I was gonna say, I feel like that's tough.
Yeah, I underpriced what it was gonna cost to ship, plus all the headache of going and finding, you gotta get dry ice, you gotta get box with insulation. We'll get there eventually to where we're drop shipping stuff, but mostly right now, probably 90% or more of our market is just here in Arizona, at least. We've delivered up to Flagstaff before, which is about a 3-hour drive away. That's about as far as we've delivered. I think there've been a few people who have come to us that are a little farther away. They'll buy a whole or a half a cow, and they'll come to us with a truck to get theirs. Other than that, a lot of it, one of the things we're trying to do is a subscription where you can buy a half a beef, but the reason most people don't is it's too much all at once, and they don't have a freezer space for it. So they can subscribe for like a 12-month package, and they'll get a half a beef delivered to them over 12 months, once a month, or certain cuts, kind of like a subscription box. We're hoping it works, because it works for us, because then we don't have to have we don't lose a whole half a cow all at once. So we can kind of divvy it out as long as we maintain the inventory and make sure that we know what box everybody gets each month.
How long can meat be like frozen for until it kind of would be like not as fresh?
So so we have it all vacuum sealed so you can see it, because we're selling the marbling and selling it. So as long as the vacuum pack doesn't get punctured, if it gets punctured, it can get freezer burnt pretty fast. But as long as it doesn't get punctured, we're usually about 2.5 to 3 years of a shelf life. Because they're frozen fresh, they flash frozen to us, so they're never thawed until the customer gets it.
And the processor does all of that, and then you guys just pick it up.
Yep.
Okay.
And we use USDA processors. That's what allows us to sell them. So we do that so we can sell the cuts and even housing holes. But then another thing is I like the idea that I'm getting my cow back. Whereas I don't know. I've heard people say they go in, bring it in, do the custom cuts, or the custom processing, which is where it's all wrapped up in butcher paper and says not for sale on it. That's the kind that it's made for a person, but that person can't go resell it. And some people wonder if they get their cow back, or if they just get a certain amount of beef back that's not necessarily their cow. And since ours are kind of a specialty, we want to make sure we get we get it back.
How many farms do you have as far as like land farms?
As a business, we operate them all under Blue Pine Ranch, but we have 3. We have here, then we have 80 acres in Snowflake, Arizona, which is about 3 hours north, and then we have about 320 acres in southern Utah.
How large can your herd get? Like, what are you looking to grow it to before you could like supply a restaurant or something like that?
Probably about 1,000 head is what we have the room for that. Right now we have like 75.
Okay.
the numbers that I've run, once we're at about 200 head, we can really start moving forward with a lot of that. But to get 1,000, then we'd have enough inventory to really start being more creative in our open up a market, and then but still have enough supply.
And about how long would that take to reach 1,000 head?
It depends on how much money I get. I mean, we could buy them to actually. I haven't done the math to see how much. Let me think out loud here, because we got about 55 adult cows right now. So we'll get about 55 calves this year. And then next year, we're gonna have about 70 adult calves. We got about 15 to 20 younger calves, like a couple in here. They're not mature enough yet to breed. Next year they will be. So next year we'll have 75. So then at that point, we'll have 75 calves next year. So I gotta go through and kind of do the math, but it'll grow. A cow, they've done studies. I say they've done studies because I can't tell you who right now, different colleges. But it's the healthiest for a cow to calve when she is 24 months. It sets her up more, she's healthier, it kind of gets everything going. If they calve when they're later, it can hurt them, or they just simply don't calve anymore. They get a little bit too fatty around all their internal organs. So our goal is to have every cow calf at 24 months, which means we breed them at 15 months. So that means when a cow, like these little guys, they're two little girls that were born this week, 15 months from now, we'll be putting them in with a bull, hopefully getting them bred so that 2 years from now they're calving. So there's kind of once a cow has a calf, there's 2 years before that calf has a calf. But we also have, every year we have cows that are at different ages that are growing, so it continues to grow exponentially. It more than doubles. Last year, for example, we had 35 calves born. And so this year we expect 55, next year we expect 75. And then the year after that, it'll probably be over 100. I've got to do the math at that point.
No, you're totally fine.
And so and that's how many are born, plus we of course maintain the same number of head, so.
Will you take these calves when they're weaned out of this pasture until they're 15 months?
Yeah.
Just to make sure. And then how do you put the bull in with just like the 15-monthers for like a week, or do you just put them back in with the herd and hope that, or do you have more of a system process to make sure they're getting bred at that 15 months?
We usually put the bull in with them, so we'll take them to another little lot that we have for weaning at about 6 months old, and then we hold them when they're 15 months. We bring them back, and usually at our property, that way I keep an eye on them, and we'll bring the bull in with them. They'll be with the bull for about a month, and then after that, we kind of assume they're pregnant. We can always draw blood to check, but at that point, we usually just kind of put them back with the herd. Okay. And then if they're not pregnant, they will be at some point, but usually that's about what it takes. And then because when the bull is pulled out and with new cows, he gets excited, and yeah, he does his thing, and so then they usually takes about a month.
So you will put the 15 months in with just the bull instead of leaving them in the herd. Okay.
Yep. And then once they've been bred, or about a month later, we just bring them all together. They're very social animals. They like being together. It's funny. I was going to point out those cows. They're not ours, but they're almost always over here at the fence watching us when we're out here. They just love to see what's going on. So cows are very social. They're curious. They like to see what's happening, and that's kind of the goal there. And then the bulls turn into steers a little bit later. At about 18 months is when we separate them out to start getting them ready to finish off. We'll put them, we don't pen them up in a confined space so much, but we'll have 3 or 4 18-month steers at our place, so they don't have to compete for the food. It's kind of what we mean by finishing. We'll let them come into our place, and if they're going to be grain finished, we'll introduce a little bit of the corn, oats, and barley mixture along with hay, and they start to grow because they're not competing with the bull and all these big cows for the feed. So we kind of do that at 18 months. So there's kind of 15 month and then 18 month are the two key. We have these other pastures kind of along there that we use. They're growing right now. We're letting the grass grow, and then we'll be moving these guys in about a week over to one of those pastures. And
you said it takes about a month to get the grass back?
Usually, yeah, when it's warm. It's starting to get warm now, and yeah, usually they'll eat it down in about a week, and then we'll let it grow back for about a month. Then it'll be back up to knee high for the cows, and they'll come in and eat it down again. If we don't cut the grass all the way down, it grows back faster. If we let it grow all the way to the bare nothing, then it has a hard time coming back. So we just kind of eat it down to where it's a good 2 or 3 inches long, and then we pull them off it so that it can recover. Our beautiful pond. It gets refreshed when we irrigate. So irrigation comes out of that port, and it'll be next week in about 4 days actually. And the irrigation comes out and then pours over everything, and it refreshes that, so it's clean for about a week or two after we irrigate.
How often do you have to irrigate?
In the warm months, so from March all the way through November, it's twice a month. And then November, December, and January, they kind of just do once a month, just to kind of, because it cools off and just to kind of maintain.
And then how much do you spend on irrigation?
You know, in Arizona, it's not as bad. In Utah, we have to have water rights. Hey, buddy, this is Skeeter. He's my boy. He's a good boy. So here we don't actually have to have the water rights. We pay for, it's kind of a pay for use. It's about $20 for about an hour of water. I do 2 hours to flood this, and so it costs me about $40 every time we irrigate, and it puts about 6 inches of water across all the green grass here.
And that's doing like those pastures and stuff too?
Yeah, that one. We do that one and this one for 2 hours. Okay. And then if it's more, so really about an hour, I guess, would do this, and then an hour of that. We just open them both ports and let it flood, you know. So,
and then that lasts for like about 2 weeks-ish in
yeah.
hot months.
Yeah, yeah.
But it'll still be green grass like in the hot months?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It'll green, because we do, it's a Bermuda is what it is, a Bermuda blend, and that does well in the above 80 degrees. When it gets below 80, then it turns yellow. So if you look around and see a lot of yellow grass, it's probably a Bermuda, and it's because it hasn't been above 80 constantly here.
If I were to buy a whole cow, how much would that cost?
We sell $14 a pound for the beef. That's deboned and packaged and processed, but that's kind of the average of what so yeah, if you bought a whole cow, it'd be $14 a pound. You get about 400 pounds of beef out of a full grown, like 1,000-pound steer. You're gonna get about 400 pounds of beef.
And that's like all different cuts and everything?
Yeah.
So you don't charge more for like a marbled like
ribeye or something
versus ground beef?
We do, if not if you're buying the whole cow. That's why the $14 is kind of an averaged out. If you came to us and wanted to just buy some ribeyes, they're going to be more expensive. They're closer to $50 a pound for a nice ribeye. And the ground beef is, I think we sell at the farmer's market for about 12 bucks a pound. So that's the cheapest. And then the ribeyes, the tenderloin fillets are the most expensive per pound because they come in about 6-ounce packages for about I think $40 for 6 ounce.
So can you explain to me like the different titles and what they mean for each type of cow and age of cow?
When they're born, of course, you got the male and the female. So they're born a bull or they're born a cow or a heifer. A heifer is just the name of it's a cow that has not had a calf before. So they're kind of called a heifer to denote a female calf until they get to be old enough to have a calf. Once they've had a calf, they're just referred to as a cow. The boys are a bull, and then we usually use a band, but you band-aid them or castrate them, and that becomes a steer.
Okay.
So a steer is a male bull that is castrated. Okay. And we do that for a couple reasons. It helps with their meanness as they get older, but bulls actually have a pretty good beef. A lot of people like bull beef. The problem is you can't have a whole herd of bulls.
As opposed to a steer?
A steer,
okay.
Yeah. Steers, generally, they don't have as much testosterone, and so they still get pretty muscly and pretty big, and sometimes I've had a couple of mean steers before, so it doesn't mean they're not mean all the time when but you band them, it takes away a lot of the testosterone, and they're not as aggressive and they're not trying to push themselves around with all the other cows and the rest of the herd. And so you usually they call it keeping them intact is a bull. Mm-hmm. You usually just kind of keep a bull for breeding purposes. Otherwise you band them and castrate them so they become a steer. And that way then they're just grown for beef is their kind of whole purpose. Unless they're an ornament. Some people call a pet cow, it's miniature cows, or sometimes we refer to them as lawn ornaments because they're just a pet, which is great. Yeah. And they're cute and they'll eat the grass, but they're just kind of left as a pet. And sometimes those are usually steers.
And do you put steers in with like the heifers and stuff, or are they in their own herd?
No, they'll be in with everybody. Okay. So in fact, I could have pointed out we got a couple of steers in there. Oh, okay. They're just growing until they're old enough to process, but we keep them all together. Cows are happier that way. They never like to be separated. I found even a bull, when bulls have a reputation for being mean and ornery and grumpy. In my experience, it's usually because they're penned up. They're kept alone. Who wouldn't be grumpy? And
you can't really keep them together, right? Because they would fight each other a lot.
Well, if they're multiple bulls, yeah. So one bull, like in our herd, we have one bull, and everybody respects him. He's the alpha male, of course, but he doesn't have another bull to fight with. Otherwise, they'd be tearing up fences and breaking things, and it'd be fighting all the time. So we just have one bull with the herd, and then if it's a big enough herd, some people will have a couple of bulls because there's so many cows, but that you got to have a lot of cows for that. You guys
have 4, you said?
Yeah, 3 bulls right now. Yeah.
One at each property?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where are you doing most of your business?
So the markets definitely get our name out. And sometimes we'll have really good luck with markets and sell quite a bit of beef. Other times it's totally dead. We tend to get more money, I guess, when people want to buy halves and wholes of cows, because that's just a big purchase. but they kind of come from the markets. So they'll say, we saw you at the marketplace, we're wondering, do you sell wholes or halves? If we count that business, we get more money from the selling wholes and halves, but we tend to get our name out through the markets. And we got these little guys, we have a few other big freezers. We got not these ones, because one of the processors we use is down in Cochise, Arizona, which is 3 miles south. It's even hotter, and in the summertime, they're just north of the Mexican border. And if it's in the summer, 115 degrees, we got to go there, pick up all the beef and bring it back. So we throw these in the back of the truck with a generator to keep the freezers going.
Do you have 3 tips of advice for like a future or like someone who's aspiring to be an entrepreneur and start a small business?
So usually when somebody wants to start their own business, it's because they're good at something. It's like, I'm really good at this. I should do this myself. I can work myself. And that's a little bit of a myth. It's a little bit of they can do that to a point, but there's always a point where they get, sometimes it's so busy, it just becomes really hard because there's aspects of business. My advice would be, don't quit at that point. Just try to get some training, get a coach or somebody that can kind of help you navigate through that difficult growing stage, because you can't do it all yourself, especially when you become a business owner, because there's a lot more to business than just doing the actual work inside it. Just know that that's normal. You're not the only one when you go into you get into the valley of the shadow of death, sometimes they call it, where it's like, this sucks, what was I thinking? It's my opinion that that's when people quit, and that's why so many small businesses fail. If you can kind of soldier through that, like I said, there's business consultants who can help, but it usually becomes setting up some processes and maybe getting even a part-time employee, somebody to help with some of the work, because you can't do it all yourself. Almost nobody has a successful business doing it all by themselves.
If someone's looking to reach out to you or find you, can you guys talk about like where people can find your business or more information about you guys?
Biggest place, I guess, our website. It's bluepineranch.com, and it's the color blue. Pine and Pine Tree Ranch. Sometimes people go BLU Pine for some reason, it doesn't get there. So bluepineranch.com is our website, and I think Facebook is the same, right?
Yeah, Blue Pine Ranch. On Instagram, it's bluepine_ranch. And then Facebook is just Blue Pine Ranch.
Where can we buy your stuff?
Scottsdale Farmers Markets on Saturdays. We're looking to get into more, but as of now, we're just in the Scottsdale Farmers Market.
And then the website, you can order things online. We have there'll be a link to shop now, take you to a website that has our inventory that you can order. And if you're local, we'll deliver it. If you're not local, we can ship it.